I used to think that silence was peaceful. That was before it filled every room of my house like a ghost I couldn't shake. Derek had been gone for almost 3 weeks now. His job in another city had him traveling constantly, and whenever he came home, he brought exhaustion, not affection. The first few months I told myself it was just stress, that it would pass. But years later, the same excuses had become my lullabies, empty reassurances whispered to my pillow at night. Even when he was home, Derek barely looked at me. We'd eat dinner in silence, share a bed without touching, and talk only when necessary. It wasn't hatred. It was worse. It was indifference. Then there was Nolan. Nolan was Derek's younger brother. He was nothing like him, louder, warmer, always flashing that devilish grin that made you forget he was just visiting. At first, I thought he was just trying to be friendly. He'd drop by every few days under the pretense of checking on me while Derek was away. Just making sure the house hasn't collapsed, he'd joke. I should have seen the signs. He lingered a little too long in the kitchen. Sat a little too close on the couch. His compliments, at first innocent, grew more bold with time. "That dress brings out your figure," he said once, casually, as if it was something a brother-in-law should say. I laughed it off, but inside, I felt something stir. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. I hated how my heart sped up. I hated that I looked forward to his visits more than I looked forward to Derek's calls. One Wednesday afternoon, Nolan stopped by again. He brought a bottle of wine, said he found it while cleaning out his storage and figured I could use a glass. We sat in the living room. I had planned to fold laundry, but the laundry remained untouched as we sipped and talked, about everything and nothing. He made me laugh. Actually laugh. It felt good. The glass in my hand felt warmer than it should have. His eyes held mine too long, but I didn't look away. There was something unspoken between us, thick in the air like the humidity before a thunderstorm. I knew it was wrong. I was married. He was family. But I didn't move when his knee touched mine. I didn't flinch when his hand brushed against my fingers and stayed there. He looked at me like I was more than a wife, more than a sister-in-law. He looked at me like I was a woman again. "I'm sorry," he said, and for a moment I thought he was pulling back. But then his hand found my cheek. His thumb brushed just under my eye, and I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "You shouldn't," I whispered, my voice thin and brittle. "I know," he replied. But he didn't move. Neither did I. I hated myself for not pulling away. But I hated the silence more, the kind Derek had wrapped me in like a straitjacket. This wasn't love. I knew that. But it was something. Something dangerous, yes, but something real. Then his phone rang. Saved by the bell, I thought. He fumbled to check it, cursing under his breath. "It's Liam. He needs a ride from soccer practice." My nephew. His son. The spell broke just like that. Nolan stood, raking a hand through his hair, avoiding my eyes. "I'll go pick him up." I nodded quickly, heart pounding. I stood too, suddenly aware of how close we'd been, of how fast the moment had escalated. As he opened the door, he paused. "You okay?" I nodded, too fast. "Yeah." It was just wine, I guess. He hesitated, then gave a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'll see you later." The door closed behind him, but the storm he left behind still raged in my chest. I sat back down, wineglass still half full, and stared at the spot where his hand had touched mine. This wasn't me. I wasn't someone who blurred lines. But the line between loneliness and desire, it wasn't a line anymore. It was a blur. And in that blur, I had stopped being Derek's wife. I had become someone else, someone I wasn't sure I recognized. But I couldn't deny it. I didn't stop him. And worse, I didn't want to. The air was heavy that afternoon, so thick with heat and silence that even the ticking wall clock sounded louder than usual. Derek was out of town again, lost in meetings and conference calls, and the house felt too big for just one person. I'd opened all the windows but nothing helped the weight sitting in my chest. I wasn't expecting Nolan that day. I hadn't called him. But part of me wanted him to show up. And he did. No wine this time. Just him. A simple knock. No excuses. No toolbox. Just the two of us standing in the doorway like we already knew what would happen next. "You busy?" he asked, like it mattered. I shook my head, moving aside to let him in. I told myself I'd just make coffee, keep it light, keep it clean. But deep down, I already knew the truth. He sat on the couch while I went to the kitchen. I could feel his eyes on me even when my back was turned. Every time I looked at him, he wasn't smiling.
He wasn't joking.
There was something serious in his expression, like a decision had already been made. I placed the coffee mugs down, but neither of us touched them. I keep thinking about last time, he said quietly.
So do I replied. My voice was softer than I expected.
My hands trembled, but I didn't hide them.
He leaned closer.
You don't have to be alone all the time, Olivia. You deserve to feel something. I don't want to talk about deserving, I said.
Because I know this isn't that.
He looked at me like he wanted to argue, but he didn't.
He just reached for my hand.
This time, I didn't hesitate.
His lips met mine.
Gently at first. Then with a hunger that had been building in both of us for weeks.
Our bodies fit in ways our lives didn't.
The sound of guilt roared in the back of my mind, but my body had stopped listening. I pulled him with me to the floor near the couch. The rug was soft and sunlit, and for a moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to just us. His breath on my neck, my hands in his hair, the scent of warm cotton and coffee surrounding us, none of it felt real. It felt like I had stepped outside my life and become someone else entirely.
Someone reckless. Someone who wanted to be seen, touched, needed.
And for a while, I forgot about everything else.
Until the front door creaked open.
I froze. Nolan didn't notice at first. He was still too deep in the moment, lost in the heat of it.
But I felt it.
I looked up, barely able to lift my head, and saw him.
Liam. Standing in the doorway.
His gym bag on one shoulder, his cleats in the other hand, mouth slightly open, eyes wide.
Time stopped.
I scrambled to cover myself, pulling the throw blanket off the couch, heart pounding so violently I could barely hear Nolan cursing under his breath behind me.
Liam. I gasped, my voice strangled by panic. He didn't speak. He just turned, dropped the cleats, and walked back out the door.
The silence that followed was so loud it felt like a scream. Nolan jumped to his feet, pulling on his shirt. What the hell, he wasn't supposed to be home this early. He saw everything, I whispered.
My hands were shaking.
He's a kid, Nolan said, trying to calm me, but his voice was tight. He probably didn't even process what he saw.
But I knew better.
Liam wasn't a little boy anymore. He was 18, old enough to know what betrayal looked like when it stared him in the face. I need to call him, I said, reaching for my phone.
Nolan stopped me. Olivia, don't make this worse. Let me talk to him later.
He won't say anything.
You don't know that. I do.
He's my son.
I stared at him. Exactly.
And I'm your brother's wife.
That shut him up.
He ran his hands through his hair and sat back on the couch, suddenly looking a lot less sure of himself. The heat that had burned between us only minutes ago had turned into something else entirely, shame.
The moment was over.
The spell had shattered. All that was left now was the guilt and the fear of what would come next. The days that followed felt like walking through fog, every step uncertain, every breath too loud. I kept checking my phone, half hoping, half dreading a message from Liam.
But there was nothing. Not a word.
Not even a glance at the unread texts I sent him, each one more desperate than the last. Please talk to me. I'm sorry. It wasn't what you think.
But I knew exactly what it was. And so did he. Nolan had stopped texting too. We didn't talk after that day.
He didn't come by, didn't offer explanations or apologies. Whatever comfort I'd thought I found in him vanished the moment reality broke through our little illusion. Now it was just silence, thick, punishing silence. I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made me jump. The creak of the stairs, the hum of the fridge, even the wind brushing against the windows, it all felt louder.
And heavier.
I kept rehearsing the same nightmare, Liam telling Derek. The look on Derek's face in my imagination, betrayal, rage, disbelief, was worse than anything he'd ever shown me in real life.
But that was the cruel irony. I wasn't even sure he'd care.
And still, the guilt gnawed at me like a feral animal. By the end of the week, there was a family dinner planned, Derek's mother's birthday.
Canceling would only draw attention.
So I dressed carefully, keeping my makeup light, my smile softer than usual.
Trying to look normal.
Trying to look like a wife who hadn't been caught in the worst possible moment. When I walked into the restaurant, I saw Liam immediately. He was sitting at the far end of the table, staring at his phone.
He didn't look up when I walked past. Didn't say hello. Didn't have to. His silence was louder than a scream. I sat next to Derek.
He kissed my cheek, distracted as always, and started scrolling through emails before the appetizers even arrived. The whole dinner, I barely touched my food.
I couldn't eat. Couldn't breathe. Every laugh at the table felt fake.
Every toast, hollow. Every time I glanced at Liam, I saw the same thing, avoidance. And something else. Disgust. Later that night, while Derek showered, I stood at the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. The city looked blurred, almost unreal.
Like the version of myself I had become. I thought about what it meant to betray someone. Was it a single act?
Or a series of quiet decisions, each one too small to notice until it formed something monstrous? Derek had been drifting away from me for years.
But I had done something worse. I had stopped trying.
And now, I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The next morning, I got a single message from Nolan. Liam won't say anything.
But he's shaken. Give him time. Time. What a cruel word. I stared at the message, heart heavy.
I should have felt relief, but I didn't. I felt trapped, inside my own choices.
I never replied.
I began avoiding family events. Claimed headaches, deadlines, sudden errands. Anything to avoid facing Liam again. Anything to avoid the awkward silences and the look I couldn't bear to see in his eyes. One evening, I found myself in the bathroom, staring at my reflection.
My hair was tied back. No makeup. Just me. Bare.
I studied myself for a long time, searching for the version of Olivia I used to be. The girl who believed in love, in loyalty, in right and wrong.
But I couldn't find her.
All I saw was someone who made a choice in a moment of weakness, and changed everything. I didn't know if Liam would ever tell anyone. I didn't know if he would carry the secret forever, or if one day it would all come spilling out at the worst possible time.
But I did know this, even if no one ever found out.
I would always know.
And so would he. Some betrayals don't need to be spoken aloud. Some don't leave scars you can see.
They just live in the silence between people.
And that silence is louder than any truth.